I've found it extraordinarily irritating over, oh God, almost, well, since I've become the primary household shopper, that's the best way to describe it. Um, at going into a supermarket and just watching supermarket prices throughout New Zealand seem as if they are part of a criminal brotherhood. I just go, oh, wait on. This isn't right. They're robbing us on a daily basis and getting away with it, and nobody seems to prosecute these people at all. I'm also aware that we've got a Commerce Commission in New Zealand whose job it is to protect consumers from rapacious monopolies, whether they be cartel monopolies or singular monopolies in our country, and who seem to do a really piss poor job of doing so. So I've got really no understanding as what they do. The most recent addition to the Commerce Commission was the Grocery Commissioner. We've talked about on the show. In fact, we invited him on the show, but for some strange reason he was busy. Pierre Van Heerden, I think he was appointed by the last Labour government. And I'm still struggling to know what Pierre does, except draw a very, very good salary from the government and have a series of staff who do likewise. Well, this week a number of changes were promoted, it has to be said, to do with the grocery sector. Somebody who wrote a blog about that, which drew our attention, and we've invited him onto the show, is Ernie Newman, who, as I said, consultant, living in Waikato, extensive and serious background in grocery, telecommunications, business leadership, and he joins us now. Ernie, lovely to have you on the show. Welcome to it.
Thank you, Michael.
Listen, mate, I've read your blog, which is why I'm introducing it and you to our audience, which is headlined Our Failed Grocery Market, Where Are We Going? And that's what I want to talk to you about, obviously. Can you take us through, please, what was announced this week and if it will make any difference, in your opinion, to supermarket pricing?
Yeah, the short answer in the short term is absolutely no. The problem with this, and you've been a bit harsh on Pierre Van Heerden there, I think.
I don't
He
think I've been
is a
harsh enough.
very well skilled, well qualified guy, but he's on a highway to nowhere because of the politics of the position he's been put into. Um, the government has clearly read the political signals, wants to achieve change in the grocery market, but wants to do it by tinkering around with codes of practice and rules and sort of getting everyone to sign on the bottom line and play nicely. In fact, it's a market that is fundamentally broken.
Mm.
Excuse me. We have a duopoly where we used to have 5 or 6 competing supermarkets back in the day, way back when I worked in that industry. And when you have market failure like that, the only effective way is to work on the cause of that failure, which is to get new entrants into the market. You can't establish a set of rules and hope that a broken market will then work because people will play together better. So when you come to Pierre's role, um, until it is clear that there is a political will to actually go in there and either break up the existing supermarkets or find a meaningful way to get a complete new entrant, which is billions and billions of dollars, into the market, then all he can really do is keep replaying the same playbook, which is effectively what's going on.
Okay, but well, that's my argument about Pierre Van Heerden's appointment is that it's useless. I mean, it just doesn't do anything because there is no such political will. I mean, essentially, you're somebody with a couple of flags standing on a hill somewhere and saying, "Oh gosh, look, that's not so good." But it has no real impact upon determining the kind of reform that you're talking. It just adds another bureaucrat or five. Listen, can I? The big issue this week is about suppliers, those who provide their product to supermarkets, and transparency of pricing. Is there no transparency currently? Will that make any difference in terms of at least understanding the profit that's generated more?
There's certainly no transparency for us as consumers. When we buy a packet of biscuits, there is no way in which we can have any idea of how much the the retailer has paid the supplier for that, and how much that has been influenced by all of these slightly sleazy payments in the background, promotional allowances, fees for actually taking the biscuits out of the storeroom at the back and putting them on the shelf at the front, extra fees for giving them preferred space on the shelves, rebates, meaning that after the event, when you total up how much the retailer has bought over that particular period, you give a retrospective payment back to the retailer. There's such a convoluted mix of pricing mechanisms here that it is impossible to actually say what the margin, the effective margin on any one product is. Now, that doesn't matter so much to me as a consumer, but to the grocery commissioner, that's really important information. And
Well,
I
don't you
think,
think he should know that?
well, he should, and to give the guy his due, he's trying his level best to find out. And when you look at his report this week, one of the things he's unearthed from this is that there is $5 billion, $5 billion, that is being spent on each year on promotional discounts and the rebates and the kind of almost behind the scenes payments that I'm talking about. Now, that's all very well, but when you take the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of line items you have in grocery and try to actually work out, my packet of chocolate biscuits that I bought this morning, is the price that I've paid for that fair and reasonable? It's pretty much impossible to do. And so, really, it comes back to the argument that the only way in which the consumer can get a fair deal in an industry like that is through market forces, through genuine competition, through the knowledge that if I apply too much of a margin to a particular product, then my competitor down the road will undercut me, and the customers will all go there. And that's where we've got to focus, and that's where it comes back to the weird political climate that we find ourselves in now, compared to back in my day when I was working in the breakup of Telecom. There was a very different scenario there, Michael, because basically the country was run by National and Labor, who essentially took turns at it, and both of them agreed that Telecom had to be cut down to size, and that's how it actually played out. Now you've got this convoluted coalition arrangement where nobody knows, who is in favour or against what. It's very, very difficult.
Okay, but going back to telecom, that's a pretty good analogy, actually. We had a monopoly that provided telecommunications services to this country, which was politically broken up to establish competition. Now, admittedly, it was a state-owned monopoly. Does that make it easier? Is there a political lack of will to break up monopolies that are in the private sector?
Now, I remember, Michael, that Telecom started off as state-owned, but it was sold to the private sector some years before the issue of market dominance became an issue. So
1989 it was
it
sold,
was
wasn't it?
sold off on the New Zealand stock market, and it ended up being owned predominantly by American telecommunications companies, and that was where it set out to take every dollar it possibly could from New Zealanders at the bottom of the earth. So that, in a
So
sense,
let
that
me get
made
this
it
right.
a
So I was wrong. You say it went to the private sector, was sold to the private sector. I remember now, you're right. I think it was in 89. And then it
yeah.
was broken up once people realized, or once the government of the day, it must have been a national party then, surely, in the 90s, who realized it was in actual fact screwing everybody, and as you say, just simply transferring New Zealanders' income to the United States and the investors.
Yeah.
But there was a political
Correct.
will there, I assume, that said competition was a good thing. That was certainly a mantra that was in that national party at the time. Is there not a similar
Correct.
sort of mantra within this existing coalition government?
Actually, to be fair, it was both National and Labor. There were two big moves that together sorted out the telecom thing. There was an issue called local loop unbundling. That was done by Labor in the mid 2000s. David Cunliffe was the minister who drove that. And then there was the next stage of it, which was the split of wholesale from retail, and that was run by National through Stephen Joyce, who was the minister by that time. So yes, there was a broad political consensus that competition per se is a good thing and a necessary thing in a market, so the consumer has a fair deal. I think the complication we have now is the influence of the minor parties. To the point now, I mean, I don't want to stray off market failure and get into broader politics, but I struggle to figure out what either National or Labour really stand for anymore, because the whole political dance seems to be around the minor parties and what they might think, and I think underpinning all this is a general view that there's no way, if hell freezes over, the ACT Party would not allow the kind of market intervention in the grocery market that we saw in telecommunications 20 years ago.
No, I understand what you're
I think
saying,
that's
but as you
what
were saying that before, listen, it's a simple political solution. Labor wouldn't oppose a breakup. You could certainly gather the numbers in the House from both National and Labor and New Zealand First, presumably, to do what you want to do. I can't see Labor opposing that, given that, well, as we know, they appointed a grocery commissioner, understood that there was a problem before they were voted out of power, Ernie.
Yeah, but that is on the assumption that National would break ranks with ACT in order
Well,
to
yeah, they
do
will.
that.
Why
Like,
wouldn't you? I mean, there's nothing. You're not joined at the hip. You've got a coalition agreement on which you agree on a number of things, but you're allowed to disagree on things as well. There's not. It wouldn't be a
well,
breakup of the coalition to disagree on this.
Well, I don't know. I guess it comes down to how strongly the National Party actually feel about this, and whether they are prepared to test their coalition
Well, it's such a
agreement for
vote
the
winner,
sake of.
Ernie. Why wouldn't you do it? In fact, I would definitely do it. I would definitely, from a political point of view, the imperative would be for me to do it, to separate myself from ACT and to make myself very popular with middle New Zealanders who are paying these prices on a daily basis. I can't imagine there's a political downside to the government taking a more active role on this issue. Can you?